Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeremy Gutsche.
All right, who wants to have a little bit of fun? Okay, we're going to do that one more time, but in order to bribe you to be a little louder, the people making the most noise might just win this book. It's an award-winning book about innovation, but as I like to put it, it's half pictures, so you know it's good. Who's happy to be here at the Red Hat Summit? I can't hear you. This is the Red Hat Summit. All right, excellent. Well, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to step back a little bit from what we've been talking about and get you to think about your innovation roles within the company. Now, for a little background, I'm an innovation guy, but I started trendhunter.com, and when I learned to code, I did it by leveraging the open source community and a lot of open source software. As of Monday, we just passed about 500 million total views, so open source really means a lot to me, and that's why I'm excited to be here. So to kick things off, let's think about what innovation means in your company. It means finding something new, a breakthrough, developing some new strategy, some software, something cool that allows you to find new customers. But what's cool then? Well, this is interesting because popular and cool are actually two very different things. Cool is something unique, something that's cutting edge, and because of that, something that's viral. And that's why marketers and product designers in any category seek to attain it. But what happens when we hunt for cool? What happens when we go to the interwebs and look for inspiration? Well, we'll start to find things like tear apparel. There's a fun way to freak out your neighbors, but tougher to work into your company, depending on where you work. Awkward family photos. That's child abuse. That's what that is. Baby toupees, because, hey, it's embarrassing to be born without hair. Feathered eyelashes, customized beer labels, Braille tattoos, angry baby blogs, co-ed matching haircuts, and of course PAD, which stands for post-avatar depression disorder. Hey, we all have it. We just deal with it in different ways. My point is that micro trends and viral innovation surround us. If you're looking for inspiration, it's not actually tough to find. But the problem is, in all the companies that you work at, you also have to think about your customers. You have to think about your strategy. You have to think about, a global financial crisis that maybe we're emerging from. All of this makes the act of getting inspired distracting. So I'm going to talk about how you can create a bit of a culture of innovation and get your mindset to be thinking about how to filter through all the noise to unlock your next big ideas. Now to do that, I'm going to need you to be interactive in a couple different parts. So do you think as an audience that this open source group can make a little bit of noise? Okay, so the first question I have for you is how many people use PowerPoint? Yeah? Well, you'll have to appreciate I drew that Pac-Man. It's awesome and it's a trademark violation. But here's a bit of a question for you. What's more important, culture or strategy? Okay, you're cheating. You're copying this guy. I need you to say it at once, and remember, I drew that Pac-Man to help you out. What's more important, culture or strategy? There we go, yes. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that slogan actually comes from a sign outside Ford's strategy war room. And the takeaway is it doesn't really matter how good your strategy or your PowerPoint slides are. At the end of the day, what matters is the culture that you've created and how that empowers innovation. And really, that's what open source is all about. You're in this room because when it comes to web development or whatever form of development you do, this open source mantra has you come together as a team. Within your companies, then, that concept of culture extends even further. How willing do people feel to try new things? How open is innovation in your company? And does it allow anybody to suggest ideas? How does it tolerate failure? So I'm going to talk to you about some properties of culture that help particularly during times of change. And these are the ones I'm going to talk about. Perspective, which is the problem that you're trying to solve. Infectious communication. Failure. And customer obsession. These are areas you've heard before, but if you try and take that open source way to the complete innovation style of your company, then these are areas where you need to be revolutionary. So let's talk first about culture. Specifically, what is it that you're trying to do? Now, this is a really important question. It seems basic, but I'm going to come back to it a couple times today because the idea is that when you think about your answer to this, it's very easy to be descriptive. We make X products, or we sell Y in this area. But your answer to this actually determines the outcome of your creative process. It drives your strategy, so it becomes very important. Now, to illustrate that, I've got a little bit of a quiz. How many people here like to win? Can I hear some applause if anyone likes winning here? Yeah? Okay. So none of you. I'll work around that. No. Here's the name of the game. It's called Guess the Company. And if you haven't read my book already, you're allowed to play. But it's your chance to impress 2,500 friends. It's the opening part of the event. So I want you to shout it out if you can think of what the answer might be. Throw out your guesses as we go along. The first hint, blank has been turning creative ideas into breakthroughs for well over a century. That's on their website. GE? 3M? Apple? Look of disappointment on his face. IBM? Now's where you say your company's name. RIM, there we go. Canada. I'm from Toronto. That's awesome. By the way, how many Canadians do we have in the room? So like 5 of us? Come on, you're supposed to be louder than that. We're the beer drinking nation. Represent down here. All right, here's another hint. They invented grammar checkers. Wang, I heard? Xerox? They invented the electronic dictionary in 1985. Here, shout it out if you know it. Feel that earning bird, like desire to win. They invented the laptop word processor in 89. Already? I'm hearing a bunch here. They started building PDAs in 94. The answer is Smith Corona, the best typewriter company in the world. And that's a title they still hold today. Now, Smith Corona is actually a really interesting example to study. And I chose it for you because I think it's a great example when you go back to your companies and you talk about the role IT or open source or your innovative ideas should be playing in the company. And here's why. At first, it seems like Smith Corona missed something pretty big. You know, computers. That won't work. But actually, when you dive deeper into it, you start to see a lot of parallels that they have to successful companies like yours. So when I wanted to learn more about them, the first thing I did is I went to their website, which was funny because it exists. And not only that, but check this out. On the 8th day, God created Smith Corona. How many people knew that? What would lead a company to put that graphic on their website? Well, the first is you'd have to be defunct, not really care, and let your 14-year-old nephew make the website. We've seen that. But more importantly, Smith Corona had a 100-year history of identifying trends and opportunities and then reinventing based on them. Check out this list. The first typewriter with upper and lowercase characters, first portable electric, first powered carriage return. It keeps going on until you get to the first laptop word processor in '89. How did they just run with that? Well, here's the first parallel to your companies. They were big and they were still growing. In 1989, they had $500 million in revenue, and it was getting bigger. So you know what? Who cares about this little computing thing? If it really works out, we'll just, buy one of those companies. And this is a classic thing that happens. Today, most companies, and I'm not sure how B2C the companies are that you work at, but most companies are making the same mistake when it comes to social media. We know it's there, but we can't make money on it yet, so we won't bother. The problem is in 3 to 5 years, everyone else will be making money on it, and it'll be too late to really get in the game. But let's bring it back to Smith Corona. Here's another piece of context. Their largest competitor was Remington Rand. And in 1975, Rand did get into the wonderful world of computing with that lovely big box, a far cry from Intel 7500 series that we just saw. But fast forward to '81, and they declared bankruptcy. So the takeaway for managers, for savvy managers at Smith Corona would be, if you move too quickly, you could lose your shirt. All right, here's another piece of context. How many people recognize one of these? Yeah, that's the Commodore 128. It has a blue screen monitor and 2 external floppy drives. Boom! I remember that. Now, at the same time period, here was Smith Corona's offer. It had a spell check, search and replace. You could save on a disk. In many ways, this was like a laptop 10 years ahead of its time, but with a printer built inside of it. So now start thinking about Smith Corona's biggest customers. They're actually not even B2C. They're really B2B. Their largest customers are multinational corporations and governments. And what do you think they want? Do they want a computer box machine thing that you'll have to train them on? Or do they want a better version of what they already buy from you? So we still keep making typewriters. But you know, that's a lot of money. So when someone begs to just try computing, someone else in Smith Corona said, fine, get into partnership, do the easy route. And they got into a joint venture with Acer. Now, I don't need to ask you what happened, because obviously it didn't work out, even though Smith Corona was invented by God. But what I will do is I'll read for you a quote after the board killed that partnership 1 year later. And the quote is from the CEO. It's the most powerful takeaway I have for you today, so pay attention to the wording. He said, many people believe that the typewriter and word processor business is a buggy whip industry, which is far from true. There is still a strong market for our products in the United States and the world. By CEO G. Lee Thompson, which, by the way, I think is actually a good name for like a badass old school company. Sounds pretty tough. But the takeaway for you is this. If you use the word buggy whip in a press release, come on, you're predestined for failure. And you can see the complacency in his statement, which is probably even more important. So fast forward 3 years later, and Smith Corona was declaring bankruptcy. But Acer went on to become the second largest computer company in the world as of last year, or PC company. So the point is that situational framing dictates the outcome of your creative process. For anything you're trying to do, whether it's the IT team within your company or the greater company itself, you'll solve the problems that you set out to solve. So your answer to this question becomes very important. If Smith Corona wanted to become the world's best typewriter company, well, they are. But if they had a broader mission, if they thought about what they really did, which was to help people record their thoughts, well, then they would have had to get into computing. So what is it that you are trying to do? Now, one way to find that is to deeply understand your customer. And traditionally, that meant, surveys or different forms of market research. I'm going to show you how a powerful connection can be made when you really understand deeply your most interesting group. In this case, I'm going to show you a little case study to get us there. We're going to pretend that we're trying to get people to stop littering out the side of their vehicles. Now, how many people recognize this image? Nice. Okay, people remember this even though it's actually 40 years old, because in this commercial, in this ad, Iron Eyes Cody makes an emotional connection with his tier. As a little side note, though, he's actually an Italian actor named Desperado de Cody. So don't believe everything you see in the media. But here's the thing. Does an emotional connection matter if it works just a little bit on everyone? Because the reality is, although so many people remember that commercial, it had no measurable impact on the amount people were littering. So with anything you're trying to communicate, whether it's something to an end customer, or whether you've got a project that you're trying to sell to the business line within your company, there's a continuum of how you can get your message across. You can functionally tell people about your product or your idea. You can give them the benefits or a motivation, a sale, a discount, a cost savings. You can make that emotional connection, which is nice, but not really as tangible. Or you can go a step further and you can make a cultural connection. Now, cultural connection is a very interesting thing, but it's also very difficult. Really what it means is that you make people feel like they're part of the same team. The reason you're in this room is because you have a cultural connection to Red Hat. The reason people tattoo Harley Davidson to the side of their arm, even though it's a corporate logo, is because they have a cultural connection. And it happens even in the unsexiest of industries. If you go Google, I love ING, you'll find 150,000 people have written about how they love ING, even though it's a bank. And the way this happens is when you're not speaking to someone in your marketing, but you're speaking with them. They see you as part of the same team. But to do that, you can't just market to everyone. You need to think about, who your real customer actually is. Who's your most important customer? And in this case, we need to know who litters. So back in the day, Texas ad agency, GSD&M, they spent a lot of money figuring this out. They hired a research company, and they found out who litters. But I was thinking that savvy developers like yourself could help me figure this out right now in the room. Do you think we can do it? Sure. Okay, so I need you to be really loud. Who litters on the side of the road, males or females? Like not one of you can yell at females. Jeez. Okay, young males or old males? Damn young males. And do they drive cars or do they drive trucks? Minivans or pickup trucks? Wow. So with no evidence at all or research, you're a very convinced group. It turns out when they actually did this, surprisingly, what they learned is, you're absolutely right. The people who litter on the side of the road are males, they're young, and they drive pickup trucks. Now, this might be in the Canadian in me, but from my experience, I'd say they drink a little beer. Putting this back into Texas, I'll say maybe they've got a shotgun rack. But most importantly, they have a king of my world lifestyle. So put yourself inside this pickup truck, juxtapose yourself next to the crying Italian actor, and ask yourself if he stops you from wanting to throw a beer can out of your pickup truck window. Inevitably, he does not. So I'm going to show you the campaign they came up with. And when I do, you'll recognize the slogan. But what you might not realize is that these words were used together for the very first time to get young males to stop littering. This is a trademarked ad slogan. Don't mess with Texas. Trademark. We got some Texans over there. They're like, come on, represent. I love it. So they have the athletes, icons, and sports heroes of the day chanting this slogan. And one of the very first ones featured 2 Dallas Cowboy superstars. And like most overpaid athletes, they're standing on the side of the road just watching the cars go by. It's believable. And as soon as they see someone, toss a can on the ground, the guy marches on over, picks the can up, smashes it against his head, and says, if you litter in Texas, you're messing with me. Don't mess with Texas. Okay, got it. Won't litter. You can see how much more aggressive and macho that campaign becomes, and because of that, the connection that it makes. I'm going to show you today how they keep that connection alive with a recent commercial spot. Here we go.
Hey, this is Owen Wilson.
This is Erica Badu.
I'm Janine Turner.
This is Julius Jones.
This is Lance Armstrong.
This is Leanne Womack.
We're Lost Lonely Boys.
This is Chuck Norris.
This is Jennifer Love Hewitt reminding you.
Don't mess with Texas.
Now, I don't know about you, but I would have ended on Chuck Norris. But they're like, no, Matthew McConaughey. Everyone's afraid of him. Actually, as a fun little side note, my publisher also published the book called True Facts About Chuck Norris. And he gave me the side story to it, and what was great is Chuck didn't know about it until he was walking through the bookstore. Presumably, if you see a book that's true facts about you, you're going to pick it up. So he sued. And when he did, this propelled the book to become a bestseller. And the only real difference you'll note is it now has a sticker that says, parody. Because you have this background story, go pick up the new sequel, Chuck Norris versus Mr. T. And when you open it up, you'll see one of the very first ones is, Chuck Norris doesn't laugh. He sues. Anyway, the cool thing about when you make a cultural connection, when people perceive you as part of their team, is that they endorse you, they support you, they help you, they advertise for you. And in this case, people even go to the extent of creating commercials and putting them up on YouTube. So here's a user-generated Don't Mess with Texas commercial.
You know why I pulled you over?
Hey, hold on one sec. Hey man, I gotta let you go. I got pulled over. Yeah, I'll give you a call back. Okay, great.
Please, don't mess with Texas.
Can I get some support from the Texans again on that? Now, I actually am censoring myself when I showed you those, because I found some that took it a little bit further. This one featured a young man in a park assembling his rifle in Texas, obviously. And as soon as he saw someone litter, you hear the shot go off, and it says, don't mess with Texas. Why it's funny is that if you look at his YouTube description, he says, I created this for a charity contest, but I was disqualified. The world is not fair. I also found one with 2 young women destroying a minivan, but we agreed that pickup truck drivers are the ones that litter. And here's where I want you to relate this back to your own campaigns. It's easy to think that you've got something successful or a way to message your product that's great, and that's what Ironized Code is. It's great, but it actually doesn't create any action, so it doesn't become epic. We remember it, but the difference is that if you have people think that you're on the same team, then you can create that cultural connection. And in this case, litter on the side of the road was reduced by 72%, slightly beating the goal, which was 5%. That slogan is now synonymous with Texas. So in all industries, then, innovation should include everyone, and it starts with your designers, entrepreneurs, marketers, IT people observing your customer to really figure out what makes them tick. It matters for the CEO right down to the newest hire. And while it used to mean things like focus group surveys and interviews, those are fun and there's data there. But to really get meaning, you need to find ways to observe customers in their zone. This can be really difficult, and I've got dozens of different examples on how companies do this, but I'll give you one that I really like. I was interviewing the head of design for General Motors, and I was interested in the Escalade, which is the greatest selling SUV by dollar value, in the US at least. And so I asked him, hey, how did you make this happen? Did you product place this in rap videos, or how did you embed this in hip-hop culture? I'm so excited to learn the answer. And he says, well, I designed a luxurious sport utility vehicle for affluent males aged 45 to 60. And then that happened. Okay, great. I'm glad I took all those marketing courses in school. Apparently that works. But when he knew his customer changed, when he didn't really understand it, he could have gotten any one of the 1,000 people on his team to figure it out for him, to go and do the research, to make him a video, but that's not what he did. He personally decided that he would go to the most dangerous neighborhood in Detroit. And I want you to think, who was driving the Escalade, the most dangerous neighborhood in Detroit? Right? We've all seen a few episodes of The Wire. So he waves down this Escalade, marches on over, and the window rolls down, presumably to take his order. And he says, excuse me, young man, but I designed this vehicle, and I was wondering if I could accompany you on a ride alongside your business for the day. Wow. Now, for that young man, this is actually really cool because that vehicle's an icon in his culture. So it's pretty awesome to meet the designer of it. And for that designer, he gets to meet someone with a different job occupation. Now, I've replicated this in many ways. I used to run Capital One's innovation team, and what I did is actually got my team, and all the senior people had to work in the booth. The CEO even had to answer the customer complaint calls, but the process was to better understand what customers are all about. Continental's CEO flies economy unannounced. There's so many examples of this. Fast company editors actually call people who cancel their subscriptions. But the idea is you want to push yourself to deeply understand your customer. Let's pretend you've got that figured out. You've got your culture excited. You want to start a revolution. You've got a product or you've got something you want to roll out. How do you actually communicate it? Traditionally, marketers talk to you about classic marketing. But at trendhunter.com, what we study is how to go viral. And not necessarily from the social media sense, because that's kind of common. But what we try and look for are what are the properties of a message that make it get captured. And really, there's three things we've learned. You can have a viral creation, which means your product or service is so good people talk about it. You could have a viral medium. The way you deliver your message could be so unique that people remember it. Or finally, you could have a well-packaged story. With a well-packaged story, the way you articulate your message wraps around your whole brand and makes me want to choose you or talk about you. So let's talk about all three of these. For the first one, how many people here sometimes work from home? Wow, so that's like none of you. Just kidding, that's all of you. The thing that's nice about that is you don't have to put on any clothes. But now every laptop has a webcam on it. You're following where I'm going with this, right? Suddenly, people want to Skype in, and you've got to put something on. You've got to get dressed. You might even need to put on a suit. But you don't need just any suit. You need a half suit. The half suit's all business up top and all party down below. And it's actually very nostalgic to us at Trend Hunter. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, but Trend Hunter is crowdsourced, so that's another interesting open source sort of tie-in. But one of our contributors had written about this, and it became our first example of being in the epicenter of the blogosphere. It was 2006, 5 years ago, 175 sites linked to us, 1,800 sites linked to them, and if you fast forward just a little bit, that little half suit got 35 million impressions. Enough that, by the way, the guy actually sent me one. So if you ever see me in a suit, like, be warned that hopefully I don't pan down. There's an interesting thing from this, though. It's not that you're going to create a half suit, but there's two powerful takeaways. The first is that when you create something that connects with your customer, your story will now travel faster than ever before. Social media empowers us to have a tremendous, platform. But the second thing is you can study what messages actually travel and use those properties to change how you message, what you're selling and how you excite and empower your teams. So let me talk to you about a couple examples of that. The first is how you deliver your message. Does anyone know this guy? This guy's name is Josh Bell. Now, Josh Bell plays a $3.5 million Stradivarius violin. He played all the music in the movie The Red Violin, and when he's on stage, he makes a cool, crisp $1,000 a minute. So, based on that, I'd say he's quite simply the best in the world at what it is that he does. So the Washington Post, they wanted to hire Josh Bell, and they found a night where he had a sold-out concert, and they put him in the busiest area they could find playing his most technically complex piece. But they don't know how many are going to stop. It's an out-of-the-blue PR event. So how many do you think will stop? I'm going to need to show hands. How many people say half of the people going by will stop and listen to Josh for a little bit? Okay, we got a couple. Put your hands up if you think 25% will stop. Okay, that's more of the room. And 10%? All right, so that's the consensus, mostly 10 to 25. Here's what happened. Josh Bell is the best in the world. When he's on stage, he makes $1,000 a minute. But when he's not packaged like that, of 1,100 people, just 7 stopped, and he made a total of $35, most of which came from one woman who recognized him and said, "Hey, will you be here again next week?" Portray your product as average, and that's all that it will ever be. Instead, you need to think about how you're making something that's irresistible to a specific group of people. And that brings us to our final section, which is on having a well-packaged story. This is the question we started with. Specifically, what is it that you're trying to do? Or put differently, why should I choose you? As you think about your answer to that, it needs to be 7 words or less, both for your customers and internally for your team. Complex vision statements, everything else doesn't really matter. And as you think about those 7 words, I want to give you trendhunter.com's rule number 1, and that's to relentlessly obsess about your story. Now, for us, that means we obsess about our titles, and our editors actually compete on our titles, and we do a lot of experimentation to figure out what goes viral. Because really, word of mouth and the blogosphere and Twitter, Facebook, they work in the same way. So to give you an idea of how powerful word choice can be, there was an American politician. Her name was Sarah Palin. Anyone? Anyone remember her? Now, when she was announced, somebody wrote an article, and they put it on Trend Hunter, and they titled it Female Vice Presidents. And I thought, that's interesting, but those aren't the 3 words that really, capture what she's all about and why you search for her. So, like we often do, I did an experiment. And right behind Female Vice Presidents was my similar article called Hot Vice Presidents. Same content, different title. Now, the first one got 35,000 views, but the second one got 1.1 million views and was sourced by CNN, Fox, and the Associated Press. Simple word choice makes a really big impact. So I'm going to show you our sort of secret formula, if you will, and I actually go into a lot more detail in my book, so I guess it's not too secret. But ultimately, these are the 3 characteristics that our editors compete on. This is what we've boiled our framework down to. These are the things that make your title for your products or company viral. The first is, you need to be simple. Simple messages supercharge word of mouth. The second is that you need to be direct, and this is where most people make a mistake. Direct and descriptive are 2 very different things. Direct answers the question of why should I choose you? And finally, you need to be supercharged. When you're supercharged, you're using words and description that are just awesome. They make me want to talk about it. They pass the I have to tell someone test. So that's the framework, and those are just, words on a wall right now. But what happens when we apply this to something? This lovely little hamburger is called the Fleur Burger, and actually it comes from a restaurant called Fleur de Lis in the Mandalay Bay Casino in Las Vegas. Now, if I asked you right now how many would want to talk about this, none of you would put up your hands because it's just not interesting enough yet. It's a burger. Cool. But that's a title that would make a traditional marketing team quite happy. Fleur Burger at the Fleur de Lis. Nice play on words. It conveys luxury. It conveys French cuisine. That's how traditional advertising works. But that's not what we're trying to do and what you shouldn't be doing. What if you called this the world's most expensive hamburger? Well, that would be simple and direct. Not quite supercharged, but you're a little bit more interested in it. But what if we made this tangible? What if we called this what it is? This is a $5,000 hamburger. If you finish it, you should get a certificate for your wall that says, I just ate a $5,000 hamburger. Next time someone complains about an expensive entree here in Boston or in the cities where you're from, you're going to remember, how much was this burger?
$5,000.
That message just stuck, especially for you, sir. As our final example, I'm going to keep us in the wonderful world of hamburgers with this healthy-looking beast. This could come to us from the Fat Burger Cafe, which would be simple and direct, but not quite supercharged. Actually, this comes to us from the Heart Attack Grill. At the Heart Attack Grill, that's called a quadruple bypass burger. It comes served to you by someone wearing a nurse's outfit. And it comes in a combo pack that includes 3 beer and 3 packs of cigarettes. And if you finish it, they'll put you in a wheelchair and they'll roll you back to your car. Rule number 1 is to relentlessly obsess about your story. That brings me to the end of my presentation, but if you're looking for more, as I mentioned, my book is half pictures, which is intentional because it's a very PowerPoint style, because that's how I think we all learn. And if you're looking for more, I actually have a link that's got about $500 of free stuff. It's trendhunter.com/secret/Red Hat. Basically, it has some videos of different segments here in case you think things like the Smith Corona story might help people at your office. I've also got this PowerPoint presentation, samples of our trend research, and our top trends in 2011 video for you. But really, what I want to leave you with is my thesis, that by leveraging viral trends and methodical innovation, you can generate ideas, harness creativity, and ultimately exploit chaos. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, and I got a little something extra here, but this is for like the back row. Who's making noise? Right there, I got 2 more. Right there. All right, thanks, everyone. Good luck in your open source goal. I love it.